सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। The next verse, having described how the wise person conducts himself in the world, which then also becomes, it's not to just kind of idealize wise person, but for a mumukshu it gives an idea as to what does it mean to grow as an individual. Otherwise maturity, growth, it just remains an idea. So these kind of words that we used, it gives us an insight into which are the areas that one needs to work in order to be blessed with this vision. Okay? Now, the next verse is talking about the wise person and what exactly is the vision of oneness. Okay? So, because the vision of oneness is construed by different people in different way. What does it mean when I say all that is here is one? Okay? And to negate some false ideas, this verse is something which is very important. Okay? And this is the verse we every day chant. If you, in fact, we have not been going on time for lunch and for dinner, but before lunch and dinner, every time they chant this verse. Brahmarpanam, Brahmahavihi, Brahmagno, Brahmanahutam, Brahmaiva tena gantavyam, Brahma karma samadhina. Okay? So we will chant and then we will see the meaning. Brahmarpanam, Brahmahavihi,
Brahmarpanam, Brahmahavihi,
Brahmagno, Brahmanahutam,
Brahmagno, Brahmanahutam,
Brahmaiva tena gantavyam,
Brahmaiva tena gantavyam,
Brahma karma samadhina.
Brahma karma samadhina.
So, the literal translation I will translate and then I will explain. No? The means of offering is Brahman, the oblation is Brahman, offered by Brahman into the fire which is Brahman. Brahman indeed is to be reached by him who sees everything as Brahman. Okay? So, here, vision of oneness, what does it mean? Okay? Are you not seeing the differences? You are seeing the differences, right? So what is this? Brahma Arpanam, Brahma Havihi. Okay? The means of offering is Brahman. The oblation is also Brahman. What you offer. So here imagery is used of a Vedic yajna. Yajna is a Vedic ritual where what happens? You sit and you offer something to the fire, Swaha, Indraya, Swaha. So you have all these different things that you offer unto the Agni. But are you offering to the Agni, the fire? No. It says Indraya, Swaha. It is for the sake of Indra. So what is an Agni for? Agni becomes a vehicle through which what? The oblation that you offer onto Agni is what? The subtle aspect reaches the person that you want to reach or the entity that you want to reach. Okay, so this is why there is a performer, there is an actor who is performing the act. Okay, unto something it is offering. Now, what is used? How do you use you use an instrument, right? You use this wooden stick. If you have seen the Vedic ritual, that the person doesn't just throw with one's hand, they use a little wooden stick with which they take a little bit of ghee and then they will offer. Okay, so that means by that instrument, one offers onto the Agni. Okay. So therefore, the subject, the object, the subject is I. Okay. What is the object? The fire. What is the
object is
the
what
object
you offer.
is what you offer is the object. Okay. Unto whom you offer? Fire. For whose sake you offer? Whoever you want to send it to. Okay. And through what you offer, that little instrument. All these, do you think they are all just one? The subject is same as object? And for whose sake it is sent is one? They are all different entities, right? You are not denying the fact that they are all different entities. You are different from the fire. What you offer unto fire is different from fire. With what you offer is also different. Okay? For whose sake you offer is also different. Right? So here we are not trying to, when we say all that is here is one, are we trying to collapse the differences here? No. If we are not if we are not collapsing the physical differences here, then how are we seeing one? Underlying oneness. Right? When I inquire exactly, right? So please don't think that when you understand the vision of oneness, the differences in objects and their placement goes away. You see the underlying oneness. When you inquire into the individual who is offering, what is it? Brahman. Brahman is Satyam, Dhanam, Anantam, Brahman. Then, what you offer? You offer ghee, let's say ghee. Ghee is ghee, you know, you make ghee.
I already did a ritual fire.
Oh, you already did, so you know everything.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. With fire and you offer
Flowers, sugar, I think a little bit incense, I don't know. Water also. And every time we
swaha.
usually, yeah.
You say swaha, you say.
Yes.
So that means, in fact, she is making it even better because you don't just offer one object, you offer many objects. And sometimes, for doing the ritual, there is not only one priest, there are many priests. So that means subjects are many, objects are many, right? The instruments that are used, each priest has one's instrument. So the instruments are many. Okay? And sometimes you say Ganapataye Swaha, or sometimes you say Indraya Swaha, unto whom you offer are also many. Okay? So here we are not saying that they are not there, or we are not seeing them, or having removing them from our vision and seeing only one expanse which is Brahman. We are not talking about that. Okay. While all these different things are going on, they are placed differently. One is the subject, other one is what? The object. The third is what? The instrument. The fourth is what? Unto whom it is offered, by whom it is offered, at what location it is offered. They are all different. Okay, but in spite of these differences, there is only one. Why? Because when I inquire into each of these entities, I come to this underlying oneness. That's what is the vision of oneness. Right? So that means that once you understand the vision of oneness, does it then mean that you will not recognize the different place of different objects in the world? You will recognize. Will you not recognize the laws which govern the relationship between different objects? You will recognize. Will you not act in keeping with those laws? Because the laws are manifestation of Ishvara. You will. Okay? But in your vision, while doing all this, what do you understand? All this is manifestation of one reality. This is the vision of oneness. Okay? Otherwise, you just confuse everything. You think, the wise person doesn't see it, or he thinks everything is the same. The wise person sees difference between the objects and the person who's offering it, and through which it is being offered and unto which it is offered. Hey, the wise person doesn't become like a mad person who is unable to distinguish things. Sees everything, but sees something much more than what the eyes can meet. Okay? So here it is what we call Karaka. Karaka, as I explained in Sanskrit language, you have this 6 Karakas, and then you have the 7th one is a relational. Okay? So all of them are seen by the wise person. Okay? The only thing is each of this and the position and the importance of each to accomplish a given task is also seen and accurately assessed. If ghee has to be offered to the fire, you offer ghee. You don't offer what?
Marmalade.
Marmalade, exactly. Right? I mean, it's not that, everything is one, so what is the difference between ghee and marmalade? Exactly. If this is what is appropriate for that given occasion, I choose that. Okay? So in fact, all that is done even much more accurately, because you are alert. What is required at what given point in time, in what degree, you do all of that even better than others. Okay? But what makes you a wise person is what? Seeing the underlying oneness. And that is what is the vision of oneness. Now, why do we chant this verse before we eat?
Eating is like a sacrifice.
Exactly. Right? So, now the whole eating, the act of eating, one thing is beautiful because, for the first time when I went to New York, I saw what relationship people have with food. The minute, especially the women, the minute they sit on the dining table and they begin to eat, there is always this fear, how many calories there is going to be, and I'll get fat. So while sitting on the table, there is no proper relationship with the food. Okay? You are just almost scared of the food and the calories that you are going to put on. So imagine the mindset when you are eating. Now here, imagine a totally different mindset when you are eating. Okay? You say, the person who is eating is what? Brahman. The food that is being eaten is what? Brahman. The digestive fire onto which the food is offered is what? Brahman. Okay. The hands or the spoon through which this food is offered to the digestive fire is what? Brahman. For what sake? For nourishing this body, so that this body can function and do the task for which it has come on this earth. What is the task? To know all that is here is Brahman. Imagine you eat with that attitude. The differences are known between the person and the digestive fire and the spoon and the food, and that's why one day you need some dosa, next day you need some toast, the third day, they are different. They are not all one. Okay. But in all those innumerable differences, that is, if you inquire into the truth of any of those, whether it's a human body, or any given organ of the human body, or any instrument, or what is given, everything resolves in one reality, which is Brahman. And that is your vision. So when you start by saying that if you pray every day, and you say, now everything that is happening here, many different functions are happening, they are Brahman. How many times do you do the act of eating per day? 6, 7. Chinese are super. So they are going to be gnanis much faster than others. Because others eat 3 times and they remind themselves everything is Brahman. The Chinese eat 6, 7 times and they remind themselves everything is Brahman. So they will get moksha double fast.
Fast track.
The fast track. They are on the fast track. Right? So imagine that every time, the act of eating that you do so many times per day, every time you remind yourself of the fact that all that is here is Brahman. And this is why, we say that now I've heard Vedanta here, when I go out, I get so much back into what my old orientation of what the world is. Okay? Me, the subject which is isolated, the object world is different from me. It evokes all kinds of responses in me. Okay? So there is a kind of, which is a very common thing. We get back into what our habitual way of looking at things. We fall back into that pattern. So how do I somehow create a certain routine so that I'm reminded of this vision frequently enough, where I actively bring it back to my mind. It's a given aid. You know what we say? There is an aid through which you, at that given point in time, you actively bring in your mind. And you begin to see the meaning. Don't just blindly repeat, Brahmarpanam, yeah, now the food is really good, now let me finish the prayer so I can eat fast. You can, while you say, you see the meaning. You see the meaning of what it means. Okay? And that is how you make the mind, which is what? Assimilating and living the reality. It's not just the reality that you've understood in the classroom and you can figure out all the questions and the answers, right? But when you go out, how you act, with what awareness you act, what are your attitudes, that is what makes you a person who is wise or not wise. Okay. So this is a good way of seeing everything as Brahman. But everything as Brahman does not mean that there are no differences. Please understand that. And each object is placed differently in the scheme of things. That is another way of looking at it. Okay? For making the life complete, you what? Of even the act of eating complete, you need all the different things. and they all have specific position to accomplish a specific task. The food is not doing the job of a spoon. The spoon is not doing the job of what? The kidney or the liver. Each one is not only different in terms of form, but it is also different in terms of what? The function. But they are all required to do what? Accomplish a given task. They all have their place. Okay, that becomes your vision. Now you transpose that to any situation. Somebody is bugging you. Something is evoking that response in you that you are upset, or you are angry, or you are sad. Are you going to deny your sadness? No, because denial of sadness will not get you anywhere. You need to acknowledge the sadness because sadness has a reason. Okay? But imagine now, what do you see? The person who is sad is what? Brahman. The feeling of sadness is what? Brahman. The laws because of which that sadness has happened is what? Brahman. Okay? The fact that you can change and you can look at things differently, that possibly exists within what? Brahman. And if you change, the outcomes will be different because there are laws. That is within what? Brahman. You take Brahman all the way. This is wise living. Look at any situation, you can see from this point, life becomes, what a joy it becomes. Because you see the order and you make your effort and you ask for help. You ask for help from that entity which can help you, which is Ishvara. Okay. So, and ask Ishvara to help you to see in each and every situation what? The presence of Ishvara. Otherwise what happens is, until everything is going fine for me, there is Ishvara. Or worse, it's me who has accomplished everything. The minute something doesn't go according to my wishes, what? Ishvara is so unfair. I have been such a good devotee and you give this to me? What did I do to deserve this? There is no wisdom here. When you see, our teacher said, there is a, I used to always wonder what is he saying. Okay? He used to say, there is a difference between two sentences. One is, Ishvara is infallible. That is first sentence. The second sentence is, what is infallible is Ishvara. Ishvara is infallible means what? When I think things are going according to my vision and my wishes, then Ishvara is fair. The minute things don't go according to my vision, then what? Ishvara is unfair. Okay. What is the other vision? What is infallible is Ishvara. What is that vision? Sometimes with my knowledge, things seem fair to me. Sometimes with my limited knowledge, things seem unfair to me. True. But the laws of Ishvara are always not failing. Because the perspective from which they work is much wider and much larger than my little knowledge. What is infallible is Ishvara. That is a shift. Once that shift comes, life becomes much, much, much easier. You are, it is like a boatman who's trying to reach the destination. Imagine if you are trying to go against the flow of the river. How is it? Very difficult. Okay. Or you are totally oblivious to the directions or whatever, you just go whatever. Where will you go to the destination that you can reach? The boat will take you, the wind will take you there, then it will take you here and then everywhere, right? Now imagine you place the boat, you use your free will and you place the boat in that current, you identify and you place it there where the current of the river is, to reach where you want to go. How will the journey be? Peaceful and what? Towards the thing, but effortlessly, relatively. You are using your free will. It's not that you are not using your free will. Okay? Ishvara is, its work is at play. Ishvara is not your enemy. Everything that happens in your life, there is some lesson to be learned. Something to be fixed in your attitude if it is bothering you. Once you do that, what? It's done. The job is done and you are taken forward. And if that is the thing, you are not afraid of anything that unfolds tomorrow. There is a confidence, there is trust in life, there is trust in the fairness of life, and you just go along, using your free will without any burdens. Okay? So this is what is this whole Brahmarpanam Brahma Havihi is a very nice prayer to remind yourself. Okay? And also to keep in mind what it means to have the vision of oneness. We are not talking about resolving those differences. Okay? Now, the next verse is talking about people are engaged in many different kinds of pursuits that we have seen, and then he is explaining what are the different kinds of pursuits that people, Brahmarpanam Brahma Havihi is the highest, where you see Brahman everywhere and you want to know that Brahman which is in and through everything. That is very nice. Okay? But is the whole humanity committed to Brahman and knowing Brahman? No. So here the next verse is talking about what are the different commitments that people have in their life. Okay? So here he says, Dravya yajna stapo yajna yoga yajna statha pare swadhyaya jnana yajnascha yataya samshita vrataha. So you chant after me. Dravya yajna stapo yajna
Dravya yajna stapo yajna
yoga yajna statha pare Swadhyaya jnana yajnascha Yataya samshita vrataha. So why everybody is chanting so softly today? Generally, everybody is chanting very loudly and very nicely. Okay, let's do one more time. Dravya yajna stapo yajna
Dravya yajna stapo yajna
yoga yajna statha pare
yoga yajna statha pare
swadhyaya jnana yajnascha
swadhyaya jnana yajnascha
yataya samshita vrataha.
yataya samshita vrataha.
Sara is laughing. Okay.
When people are less now.
Sorry, now
it's
it's saying less.
Collective volume has gone down.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So too, then there are those who share their wealth, those who follow prayerful disciplines, those who practice yoga, and those of firm vows and effort to pursue recitation of their own Veda and self-knowledge. Okay? So that means, you see, when people want to grow as human beings, they do many different acts. Okay? So, what are the different things that people do to grow as human beings? So here he says Dravya Yajna. Okay? See, one thing is very important to understand, and that is that Dravya is wealth. Okay? Everybody likes wealth, unless you are kind of what are they called? Brainwashed to think wealth is something which is bad or whatever. Generally, people like wealth. Okay? So now, this wealth, not only you like wealth, you have a tendency to hoard. And human being is the only one where you hoard not only for what your own needs, but what you take care of generations. Sometimes for your children, then your grandchildren, then your grand-grandchildren. You want to create huge empires so that your whole family in what next 10 generations is taken care of. This is a tendency of human being. And there is nothing wrong, because everybody wants to ensure a certain physical wellness. Okay? How do you change this tendency of hoarding to what? Giving, sharing. How?
By understanding everyone is one part of same Brahman.
Yeah, in some ways it is true. In some ways it is true. But then that is sounding like too remote.
Idealist.
Exactly. It's sounding like, oh my God, everybody is Brahman, so let me help them. Yeah, I mean, in some ways it is true, but let's be a little bit more practical.
If I understand that all what it is a gift of Ishvara.
Yeah, okay. So that is another thing, that whatever wealth one has received is what? And there is some blessing, right? Now how do you continue to have that blessing? Because
By
you
using
have
it
received,
wisely.
yeah, exactly, right? So that means you have been given, it's a gift of Ishvara, not because Ishvara thinks, oh, Kal is really good, right? And then let me give him, and let not give this person anything because she is not good. Because you have done certain acts which deserve wealth. Okay? But now, there is no guarantee that you will continue to have it also in the future. So that means your future wealth itself is what? Whether you get it or not is governed by what?
Because it also Ishvara.
How right now you use that wealth. Okay? Because everybody wants wealth. So that means, in fact, by doing larger good, I am not sacrificing my good. What am I doing? I am ensuring my good. Okay? Because otherwise it sounds very idealist. Everybody is one, so let me give, and then what? What do I gain? So that means here, by helping others, what happens? I continue to have grace of Ishvara, because I have made proper use of what? My resources.
But still the intention, I think, is very important. If I do it to make sure for the future,
Yes.
this cannot be.
No, that is true. But I do see, I have an insight into how the laws work. The laws work in a way that not only I do good acts, which is not just for good acts' sake, there is a reward for it. And that's a very practical living. Because ultimately, Brihadaranyaka Upanishad says, Atmanastu kamaya sarvam priyam bhavati. You like everything, not only for that sake, you like it for yourself. Okay? So that means if you think that by doing larger good, you're sacrificing yourself, then at one point, what will you do? You said, enough of my sacrifice. But if you change the equation and you say, by larger good, I'm also being helped, then what? You'll continue. Because I'm a participant in the creation, the nature of my participation in the creation what comes back to me. This is how the laws operate. Then I'm encouraged to do more and then do more and then do more. Okay? There is a very nice verse in, and how do I become a giver? By starting to give. There is no other way. Sorry? Danantara. There is a very nice Samaveda mantra which says Setus Taraha. Okay? Cross over the bridge. Setu is bridge. Cross over the bridge. Which side to the other side? One side is Adanam. Adanam means your tendency to hoard for yourself. Now you want to cross over and you want to go where? To Danam. How will you cross the bridge? By starting to give. There is no other way, right? You start to give, even the first time what happens? It's difficult because your tendency to hoard is so much, okay? But you almost have to do what? Go against your natural tendency. This is what our teacher says, you fake it and you make it. Even if it is difficult, you still do it. Okay? Then what happens? Over a period of time, that which was difficult becomes what? Much easier, because every time you give, what happens? The universe immediately gives you a feedback. What is the feedback it gives you? You have certain satisfaction. Whether you have done it for your sake or not, universe will do that job. Will make you feel good that you have been of some help to somebody. Okay. Then the universe will work in a way that your own life is enhanced. Then you give more, then you give more, then you give more. So Dravya Yajna is what? Is meant for one's maturity. That what I have, which is a huge asset for me, I'm willing to what? Offer on to what? The Yajna is what? You offer. You offer to whom? To the humanity. And for it to be a Sattvic Yajna, as Carl says, your focus is not really you, but the focus is what? The person who needs it. But along with the person who needs it, your ability to identify the right cause also accounts for Sattvic Yajna. Either we can just give it, just emotionally being something and then you just give, or not seeing what is the cause, how is it going to be used, or you do it carefully because you have limited resources. Okay? So that means that capacity to share your wealth, your growth starts there. This is very important. Please don't make fun of the industrialists and say, oh, they are doing it only for name. And they are doing it for name, but at least they are doing it. Others are not even doing it. Okay. Every step, then you become more and more mature in the process. There is no way you can go from here to there in one shot, right? In the bridge, when you're crossing the bridge, what is happening? Every time you're going closer and closer to what? The real proper way of giving. The first step may not be exactly how it should be when you reach the other end, but it is still a first step in the right direction. Every change takes place like that. Nobody becomes from a common man to what we think a saint in one go. It is a result of what? Series of small actions which then what? Make you that big person. So that means any act of giving is a step forward with a responsibility, making sure that it is not going to be misused, it is going to be of help, and it will help, it will increase the welfare of the society rather than decrease it. Once you have taken some basic precaution, it becomes a blessing. Okay? So that is Dravya Yajna. There are other people who do Tapo Yajna. Right? So Tapo Yajna is what? They follow the prayerful disciplines. That can be the prayerful disciplines can be anything like fasting. People do fast. When in fact, India gives you a lot of opportunity. There is Navratri fast, and there is a Gaur fast, and then there is this I don't know this. What is it? Kadwa Chauth fast, and people have lots or every Saturday they fast, and every Monday they fast, and they keep Ekadashi they fast. So they keep fasting one time or the other. That is something which is a discipline. What is the big deal in fasting? Tell me. What is the big deal in fasting?
Self-denial.
Okay. I will use a little more positive word. I will say, he said self-denial, I would say self-mastery. Self-mastery because, okay, if you have some medical problem and it is going to create a problem, that's not what we are talking. Okay? Generally what happens is, over our senses, we have no control. We can't say stop. Okay? So that means that we indulge. And we indulge in a way that it is detrimental to us. There is nothing wrong in indulging also. You can ask, so what's wrong in indulging? Okay. Because let's say if I eat too much, then what? My health will suffer. I will develop diabetes or high BP or whatever. Then who is it? I'm just keeping certain mastery for somebody else's sake. I'm doing it for my sake. Okay. So that means the capacity to what? We are not saying denial. Please understand, we are not trying to deny ourselves and to kind of, make ourselves what? We are becoming much more long-sighted than short-sighted about our well-being. We are interested in our well-being. We are not trying to be hard with our body. And we are not trying to deny the body of things that it likes. That is a very, very kind of a strict, that approach we don't take. Vedanta is a very, everything is Ishvara, relax. Don't be hard. Enough of being hard with yourself. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to yourself, but don't spoil yourself. Have a certain mastery. So that means in the long run, if I am interested in my well-being, then I will take care. Because when I need to stop, I should be able to stop. So that capacity to, how do I develop that capacity? People don't have that capacity. How do I develop the capacity? By first step. Okay? This is what is the idea of tapas. There is what we call Kayika tapas, there is Vak tapas. What is a Vak tapas? Vak means speech. Okay. What is speech tapas? Generally what happens is, whatever comes to my mind, I say it out. Okay. I don't sit and think, what is what is the impact the other person going to have of my words. There is this pressure inside, and then what? It comes out as a speech, which is what? Sometimes very harsh, very hurtful. What is the vak tapas? Not speaking at all. People go for 10-day silence because you don't speak at all and they think they've done some great tapas. Maybe true, because there is so much tendency to speak and then you are curbing the tendency. But more important tapas is to continue to speak, but what?
As much as required, or like thinking.
Exactly. Right? Speak, the speech is like Agni, it's like fire. Okay? If you speak deliberately and if you speak what is necessary, it throws light upon something. It removes ignorance through your speech. You can do a lot. But if you speak irresponsibly, like fire, what will happen? It will burn. The fire has both functions. Either it can throw light, remove ignorance, remove darkness, or it can do what? It can burn. Both it can do. Speech is like that.
In Marathi there is a word, आग पाकडते.
Means
आग पाकडते is you are throwing fire.
throwing fire through your speech, right? And then people take pride. They say, whatever comes to my, I don't mince my words, or whatever comes to my mind, I say that, as though it's some great achievement. It's not. You have to be careful about what you say and how you say it. See, we go also from one extreme to the other. Either you say whatever, then you think, oh, this is not good, then what happens? You become totally silent and you don't say anything. That is also equally unhealthy. Because when you need to speak, and if you don't speak, then also what? Then you are not making enough use of the speech that is given to you. Appropriate use of speech at different given point in time. Say what needs to be said in a manner which is the least hurting possible. See, total non-hurting is not possible. Why? Because no matter what I say, if the other person is in their subjective mode, it will hurt. You can't totally control how others receive your speech. But one thing you can do, that is what? On your side, make sure that whatever you speak is not done with the intention of hurting others, or not indifferent to their sensitivity. But if you have to say something, you have to say something. You can't just keep quiet. This tapas, these kind of maturities are very subtle, but they are so real, because it really then is going to decide how you are going to transact in the world.
Gandhiji used to keep maun on Mondays. And if there was a need to communicate anything, he would write it down and keep it. But on every Monday of the week, he used to be silent.
So there is some thing to it, but also while speaking, one can be much more careful. Okay? So this is what he says, vak tapas. Then there is manas tapas. What is this manas tapas? So many attitudes we all have, which are taken as reality. If I sit with my attitudes and begin to examine their validity, it is what? Manasik tapas. Manasik tapas doesn't mean that I just have no thoughts. Trying very hard to keep away thoughts. Hey, thoughts are Ishvara's creation. Without thought, you can't accomplish anything in this world. It's the greatest blessing that is given to you, and you're trying to stop it. Okay? But if my thinking is distorted, and if I take time to see where distortions are taking place, and correct it, because all of us have distortions. There is not one person who doesn't have distortion in one area or the other. But if I sit with myself, look at my distortions and correct them, then that is what? Manas, tapas. So this kind of tapas is also necessary. Some people are engaged in the world and doing what? Dravya tapaha, some tapo yajnaha in form of tapas. They are actually what? Offering to this creation. Because they are saying, I am going to be careful how I participate in this world. Okay? Tapo yajna, then yoga yajna. And there are lots of yogis here who do yoga. Okay? That is what? Taking care of your physical body, taking care of your prana, okay? Taking care of your certain calmness of mind. So all that is something you not only have responsibility towards the world, you also have responsibility towards yourself, because you are born with this instrument and you need to take care of this instrument. So whatever you do to take care of your body, mind, sense complex, to see that it is healthy, okay, is yoga yajna. That also is very useful. All these people are doing one thing or the other for self-enhancement. Okay? And then when we say I am growing as an individual, you can be growing in any of these directions. What does it mean, growth? You can be doing any of these things or all of them. Okay? Then Swadhyaya Jnana Yajnascha. Swadhyaya means what? Here it is used in a specific manner, which is recitation of one's own Veda. Okay? But that doesn't mean it, then we can extend its meaning and say whatever you are doing, do well. Okay? Very often what happens is when people come to Vedanta, they see the limitation of their work or whatever, but what happens? If they don't take precaution, they become lax in their work. They say, but what's the meaning of this little work? Okay? Then they will not be alert, they will not make enough effort, they will not engage in it. But the mind who is not doing what needs to be done is what? Not acting responsibly. Okay? Swadhyaya, or doing what needs to be done. If I am a student, I study, no matter what it is, I engage myself with certain alertness, with a certain deliberation. That is the mindset which is required. While I am doing it, I should do it well. If I think Vedanta is good, then what? I keep time for it, but while I am doing something else, I need to do that given thing properly, right? This is how you grow. So Swadhyaya, whatever is expected of you at that given point in time, give your best.
What is the meaning of recitation of your own Veda?
Veda means generally what happens is, if you go to South India, they will tell you, they say, I am a Yajurvedi.
Oh, yeah.
So that means that they are supposed, they come from this lineage, which is what they have Yajurveda. So they use that. Then somebody will say, I am a Samavedi. So then they have to, and do that. So that is what we say, Swadhyaya. But that also is a nice discipline. Anything that you do to self-enhance, the prayers, the mantras. Mantras themselves have a very amazing effect on the mind. I started seeing that the minute you start chanting Vedic mantras, your mind is no longer the same. The pronunciations, the intonations, it all makes your mind much sharper and much more alert. So even if you take it literally and saying that whatever mantras you do, whatever, do that every day, include some kind of a, what we call, spiritual discipline in your life. Whatever it is, you choose according to your preference. There is no rule here. But that little time with yourself, whether you pray or you do japa or you do recitation, whatever it is, in whichever form you should do it. Include it as your daily routine. Okay? Kam was saying that whole morning they do some, I don't know, japa and meditation, and they do a lot every day. Every morning goes in a certain specific schedule that they have.
But still, I told you too that the time is not enough. We have to
Time is not enough, but at
study
least
Vedanta, sometimes it's only 10 minutes, and this is not good. We have to find the middle way. No?
but at least just some discipline, right? That is Swadhyaya and Gnana Yajnascha. Okay? And along with that is what? That the self-knowledge. So that means that no, all this is alone, do you think will get you what you are looking for? Just giving out donations, just being careful about what you speak, okay? Or just repeating mantras without understanding their meaning.
All this will comprise an attitude which will make you behave in that way at its step.
Exactly. So that means that all this, but what else? Gnana Yajna. You can't say, I will do all this. For many people, life goes in all these austerities and all, but they forget to what? Study the Upanishad, which will put their whole life in perspective. Life is devoted to yoga, life is devoted to Dravya Yajna, life is devoted to tapas, life is devoted to recitation of Vedas or studying anything or whatever. But if what? Gnana Yajna is missed out, then what? It is all very good, but it is what? Not, it will not bless you with the entirety. But in order to have the entirety, you need others. But just by having others, you don't ensure entirety. Okay. So you need the study of Upanishads and Gita, but plus you need what? Some amount of all the other things also.
Swadhyaya, doesn't it mean self-study or study of the self?
No, self-study doesn't mean, because self-study means generally what happens is the Swadhyaya is used in terms of what you are supposed to be studying, that you have to study. Okay? Self-study then, because what happens is you already have a certain picture of who you are, okay? What is the world and what is the universe. Okay? Now you read the books. But the books, maybe they are saying something else, but there is nobody to take you to see how what you are saying is not so accurate and how this other vision is more accurate. So if you haven't figured out the reasoning for that, the shift, even if you say, okay, now the book is saying, therefore it is right, that is not learning. So self-study in Veda we avoid. They all go to Gurukulams, even to study recitation. Okay? You try to listen, even recitation, you try to listen to a cassette where there is a chanting. The cassette will chant and you will chant after. And you will not know where you are making mistakes. So you think that you have learned the chant, but what will happen? There is no live person who will say, hey, no, not this, but this. Okay? So for every learning, you need a teacher. You need a live teacher, and you can complement it by self-studies. But self-study alone will not give you the result. That is true for not only Vedas and Upanishads and all. Even for physics, you can say, yeah, all the books are available. I'm just going to sit at home and I'm going to study physics, I'm going to study biology, I'm going to study mathematics, I'll become a doctor on my own by just reading all the books. It's not possible. Okay? So Swadhyaya means that whatever I'm supposed to learn, whether it is the Veda, we have to extend the meaning, because otherwise you say, I don't even know which Vedi I am. Right? Whether it is Veda or something else, you pay attention to it. That is a discipline. How many kids have this deficiency? What?
Attention deficit.
Attention deficit, to be able to sit and study and pay attention to any given subject matter itself is a big discipline for the mind. That your mind is able to stay with the given subject matter, see every idea from different standpoints, analyze it well, itself is a huge training for your mind. This is why Swamiji used to always say that study Sanskrit, because Sanskrit is such a precise language that it will give you the type of mind which becomes precise in its thinking and is able to see the connections. Then he used to say, if you don't want to study Sanskrit, go study mathematics. Because mathematics will give you the same kind of, or anything logic, something where your logical capacity is developed. Because the mind is something through which you see things. You can't say, I'm not going to use my mind and I want to know everything very clearly. You can't. You can't know with your ears, you can't know with your lips, you're given the faculty which is mind to comprehend things. And you need a refined mind. To any discipline, you need refined mind. And Swadhyaya will prepare the mind, the cognitive capacity. Okay? So this is what he says, Yataha Samshita Vrataha. So these are all the different ways in which people prepare themselves for this knowledge or grow as human beings. Okay? He says, now the next verse is a contrast. The next verse is saying that without any of this discipline, there are so many people who are engaged in the world just for what? Their own pleasures and their own gains. So who are they and what happens to them? It says, Yajna Shishta Vrita Pujaha Yanti Brahma Sanatanam Nayam Lokostya Yajnasya Kutonya Kuru Sattama. So, repeat after me. Yajna Shishta Vrita Pujaha
Yajna Shishta Vrita Pujaha
Yanti Brahma Sanatanam
Yanti Brahma Sanatanam
Nayam Lokostya Yajnasya
Nayam Lokostya Yajnasya
Kutonya Kuru Sattama.
Kutonya Kuru Sattama.
Here he says, Arjuna, those who partake of the nectar that is left over after yajna reach the eternal Brahman. For the one who does not perform yajna, nothing is gained in this world. How then can anything be gained in any other world? Okay. So now this yajna that we are talking about, we are not talking about this physical ritual, right? It's not like those who come and sit and do fire ritual will go to heaven or they will get good results, and those who don't do this fire ritual will go to hell. It's not that. What were the different yajnas that we are talking about in the previous verse? Dravya yajna. So if you're sharing your wealth, you're performing a yajna. Tapo yajna, right? So that means you are making sure that at the level of physical level, at the level of speech, you are exercising, at the level of mind, you are what? Checking its tendency to go astray and what? Gaining certain mastery. Yoga yajna is what?
Taking care
of your body, taking care of your mind. Then Swadhyaya means what? Your
Jnana.
Yeah, Swadhyaya, and the second one is Jnana. Swadhyaya is whatever you are doing, whatever you are studying, engaging yourself with it, applying your mind to it. That is what we call Swadhyaya. And Jnana Yajna means anything that you are understanding accurately. You are not just satisfied at what? Superficial level. So all these, or you can say the person who has then also along with other yajnas has come to what? Also know the knowledge of oneself. Okay? So that means if you are doing all this, then what happens? Whatever after doing this, whenever you do something, what happens? The result of that comes to you. Okay? As I said, the laws are that if you have performed Dravya Yajna, what will happen to you? You receive back. You receive back. You receive back from the universe. And when it comes, what do you say? Thank you. Okay? I have offered through my actions. This is what I am getting back. Thank you. This is the attitude. Okay? So yajna shishtaha bhujana. The one who receives whatever result comes as what? As a result of my yajna that I have performed, now the results are coming back to me through the laws of Ishvara. If the results are coming back to me from Ishvara, we have a Sanskrit word for it. Prasada. Okay? Prasada buddhi. Prasada buddhi is a very nice buddhi. What turns an object into prasada? When somebody gives you sugar, you say, what is it? You say sugar. But when you go to the temple and the priest gives you the same sugar, what do you say it is? Prasada. So, what has changed?
Context.
Your understanding of things. Okay? The simple object, which is a sugar, has now become prasada. Why?
Because it
Because
was
offered and received back. Exactly. Right? It is something which is now coming from Ishvara. now it is coming from Ishvara. Now if every result you have performed an action in form of a yajna, in terms of your responsibility, whether it is sharing your wealth or disciplining or gaining certain mastery over yourself, okay, or engaging yourself with full attention. Okay. Now for each of these acts, they are not going to go unnoticed. For that, the result will come. And when the result comes, what is my attitude? It is now coming from what? This act of yajna I have performed. Now what is coming back to me? The result is coming to me. Now that result is coming from where? From laws of Ishvara. If it is coming from Ishvara, then what do I have? Prasada buddhi. Our teacher used to say that imagine that if you are diabetic and somebody offers you this laddu and you say no, I have diabetes and laddu is this Indian sweet, right? And you say no. But imagine the person says this laddu is from Tirupati. Tirupati, you take a little, right? What has changed? The object is as full of calorie as it was. It is as not good for your body being a diabetic as what?
The laddu.
The laddu. But you still take it. Why? Because your understanding of where it comes from has changed. What makes an object into prasada is what? Your understanding of where it comes from. If it is coming from Ishvara, it is prasada. If it is prasada, then your whole attitude changes. You take it gracefully. It may not always be exactly in keeping with what you want. Like the laddu for diabetic person. But you still, you're gracious about it. And you stop carrying everything and you become what? Proactive about what you have to do. Focus on your yajna. Focus on your contribution. The results will automatically come. If this is your life, imagine how it will not take long before you grow as a human being. Okay? So this is what he says, that if the attitude is yajna shishta mrutabhujaha, that everything is coming, right? It's which is, once the yajna is over, then what? I take the result, the nectar. Then what will happen? Soon the person will reach Brahman. Because all the attitudes are there. There is Jnana Yajna. The person is studying Upanishads and Bhagavad Gita. Person is also what? Taking care of all the other aspects of becoming bigger, self-discipline, taking care of your body, right? And then engaging in whatever one engages in with proper attitudes, focus, application, all that is done along with the study of Upanishads and Gita. The person, and when the result comes, the person takes it as coming from laws of Ishvara, then what will happen? Soon you will be ready for this knowledge and you will gain Brahman. Okay? Now, as opposed to this person, here he says, Nayam lokosti ayajnasya. The person who doesn't have any concept of so-called yajna. The person is only thinking about oneself, one's accumulation, not interested in sharing anything, not interested in any mastery over one's sense organs, says whatever one thinks, speaks whatever, does whatever. Okay? Doesn't apply the mind in anything, just constantly what? Just engaging at superficial level, distracted. Not understanding one's responsibility in the scheme of things. Okay? What is the lot of that person? No gain. No gain. Okay? No gain here and no gain hereafter. No gain. It may seem like the person is gaining because the person may have at times wealth, power, the person may have. Okay? But in terms of the mind, in order to enjoy anything that you have, you need what? A proper disposition. A mind which is confused cannot enjoy anything. And this is why you see what people do for their enjoyment. Tell me what people do for their enjoyment. What is the most common form of enjoyment people have? They go and get drunk. That means what?
Give your control in someone else's.
What?
Give your control in someone else's hand. Say the bottle of whiskey.
Yeah.
Reality.
You get into some state where you are not, it's like you knock off your mind because your mind is too much. Right? Every source of entertainment, think about it, that we have devised sometimes it is self-enhancing. Not all entertainment is bad, right? Some classical dance that you see, or some classical music that you see, some talk you hear.
Some sports.
some nice sports, right? Where people have to work very hard to get to that level.
So even that is sattvic, rajasic,
Yeah,
tamasic.
exactly.
Even your
If your source of enjoyment is just getting drunk,
tamasic.
yeah, or physical gratification, or whatever,
Vices, gambling.
gambling, all this.
Short-term hedonism.
Absolutely.
What if a person is misguided or doing it inadvertently, or like younger people who get misguided into things like this?
Your
They're
answer
under
is in
peer
your
pressure.
question. The answer is in your question. Misguided.
Yeah, so.
So that's why you're going to become a teacher, right?
As I just want to know if, say, they are doing something which is wrong and they're not realizing it, but of course they will have the negative repercussion of it. Isn't there some way in which what they receive is a little lesser from those who do it deliberately?
Yeah. See, every human being, see, no teenager doesn't know that drinking is not good or smoking is not good. Every teenager knows. You ask them, do you know? Drugs are not good. That's why they hide and do it. If they didn't know that it was good, not good for them, they will just do it in front of you. Okay? So that means everybody knows it's not good. But still what happens? You still do it. Okay? So there is somewhere along the line, the values are not properly seen by the person and nobody has helped them to see the values accurately either. Okay? So that means when an individual is born, there are so many people who influence that individual, right? The parents, the teachers, there are lots of people who, you ask a child, who is your ideal? Every child will have some ideal, some person that the person looks up to. So we are constantly learning. We are learning from so many, who's your hero? This is why when you read all these books, the children's books you read, most of them have a hero. And this is why they say that, when we grew up, we read Ramayana, Rama was the hero. Or we read Mahabharata, Krishna was the hero. And how Krishna acts and how Rama acts, that forms our psyche. But if you read some other, I don't know what you read in the West, what do you read? I have no idea, so I don't know. I don't want to say good or bad. I
It's a
have
big
no idea.
discussion in the West because they are not more reading Krishna or Jesus or whatever. They are reading about some violent figures and all this stuff, from the morning to the evening.
You see.
Actors, musicians.
Yeah. And not even actors,
Rock
but
stars.
it's in a cruel way, it's brutality. But everyone is looking at this in the West. And this forms the mind, of course.
This forms the mind, unfortunately. Okay? So therefore, what kind of values are given in school, by parents, all that matters a lot. By the societal values. Right?
Is it in India still that they are reading Yoking Ramanaya or still?
Yes. I mean, I think majority, see, one good thing is that we have these nice books called Amar Chitra Katha. I think almost every child reads, and they are all different stories from different Mahabharata stories and Ramayana stories and many other stories. I used to read a lot, and I think
historical,
still
mythological stories.
no? You still read, right? People still read?
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
what
they
sells
still
the
read now.
most.
Oh, that's what sells the most?
Little Bheem, Little Ganesh, TV serial.
Yeah.
So that.
Cartoons.
I'm saying,
Yeah.
largely in India, but then there is a section which will go to these westernized schools and values are a little different. And peer pressure is a big problem.
In Portugal, what do you
Como é que se diz? Tipo, a Bíblia, essas coisas.
The Bible.
Na religião, sim.
But it's
And
not,
the
it's not,
Os 10 mandamentos.
the Ten Commandments,
Jesus Christ.
that's not obligatory. If you have ones that discipline, you have to choose it. So you don't have any icon or even to be in the church you have to choose it. You don't.
So you have some kind of a representation and all, that is very good. And this is why this cultural influence is very nice. Because if you don't grow up with any of this, then this problem happens much more. Okay? And this is why there is a need, I feel, that even in India it's largely been lost. And there is a need for somebody to show the wealth of this whole tradition. Because it's so not understood by majority. People may be carrying forms, but they don't, many of them don't understand the meaning behind those forms. Okay? And if you don't understand the meaning, soon the forms will be lost. Because people will question and you don't answer, then what happens? People lose. So one thing is that, and teenage years are like that. Teenage years are rebellious years. So therefore, many of us, even all of us, we rebel somehow or the other against the norms. And that is almost the natural part of growing. As long as the person comes back and there is a kind of a right support and right communication at that time, then even human life has different stages and people behave differently. So I don't think that one needs to panic when kids go to school and they become a little bit, here and there. That's okay, that's natural. But one can do one's own part in educating from a young age so that they don't go haywire later on. They come back. Okay. So here he says that if you don't have any kind of a larger purpose in life, if you don't see yourself as part of this integrated whole in which every part is connected, yajna is what? Many, many different things, objects, and each one connected in a specific way to accomplish a given task. So the whole world is like that. Each one of us is born with a certain skill, a certain position, a certain nationality, a certain gender, and each one of us has a role to play. Because we together, right, shape the future of the world. But that means my actions don't only impact me, but it impacts so many other people. How I raise my children is not only a function of between me and my children, because my children are going to be future citizens and they are going to be interacting with so many other human beings. So all those human beings will also be impacted by my action. This is how we say the interconnectedness of the world. This yajna gives an idea of that each part is different from the other, but they are all connected, okay, to perform a given action which will produce specific result. Okay? So if you don't have that kind of an understanding, but if you just are focused on yourself and just grabbing more, rather than and not giving out anything, not disciplining yourself, not engaging in the self, then he says that the whole life is a waste. Nothing is there for you here, nor in terms of what Neeru was saying is that how you live your life this time, this chance that is given to you, this lifetime. Okay? You not only experience prarabdha karma, you accumulate what? New karmas, which is what we call agami karma. This agami karma, what happens? It joins sanchita karma. So that means your future births are also going to be determined by what you do in this lifetime. So that means if you have wasted away your life in this life, not only you are not a gainer in this life, but what? Also not in the future. So this is why that a life of growth, a human being means moksha, we find knowing the final reality and growing as an individual so that one can understand the final reality. This is the Vedic vision of human life. Anything done otherwise is a waste. Or if you do it partially, lovely. This life you have done only Dravya Yajna. You are a big businessman, you have distributed a lot of wealth, lovely. At least you are doing this. Don't condemn that businessman, because even though, right, he is rich, he is giving up. You have all these people who have done extremely well in businesses, Bill Gates and this and that, and they all do huge charities. So they are good. They are at least better than most of the people who are just grabbing. So that itself is a yajna, because you see your responsibility towards others and you act. But that can be expanded in so many different directions. And when will the opportunity come for you to learn Vedanta? Unless you have done some amount of yajna before, some amount of preparation, you will not even come to Vedanta Shastra. They say in the life of a jiva, coming to Vedanta itself is a huge event. Huge event. Why? Because we have lived as one little individual, not only in this life, but for cycles and cycles and cycles of creation. In this lifetime, if you are given the opportunity to question the reality of this individuality, it is the greatest gift. That means the person has done a lot of punya. It may not seem like that to you, because you may have come to Vedanta because of a lot of difficulty. But how many people have difficulties? Almost everyone. And out of those everyone who are having difficulties, how many have come to Vedanta? A few. Okay? So these few are blessed. Blessed not because Ishvara likes you and not somebody else, but what? You have done the karma, you have made those efforts in form of this one yajna or the other, or combination of yajna in the past to deserve what? Coming to Vedanta.
The laws have brought you.
The laws have brought you here. And this is what I see very, 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 very vividly. When we organize a retreat, I don't know, there is some cosmic activity that goes on. Whoever is meant to be here will be here. And people who are not meant to be here can't get here. And after coming here, how long they stay, how much attention they pay, there is all a function of both the free will as well as grace. Ishvara is at work. In any teaching situation, Ishvara is at work. And if Ishvara chooses laws, not Ishvara as one person sitting and saying, this one now has to go out. No. When your punya runs out, time is over, you have to go. This is why pray. Pray every time so that you keep on not only expanding punya, keep on accumulating new one, which will give you opportunities to listen to it again and again and again till you get it. Okay. So this is what he says, that if you don't live your life with this awareness of interconnectedness, your responsibilities, your contribution, but just interested in grabbing things and in accumulating your wealth, disregarding your connection with everything, it's a life wasted here and hereafter. Okay, so with this I will end, and then I will see how many. Many, still many. Doesn't matter. What we can do is tomorrow night we can still do one more Gita class if you don't mind. Yeah?
I have a little question. Maybe it's a wrong translation from English in German. It's also take as a result with Prasad.
Result as Prasad.
Reach the eternal Brahman.
Where is it?
This verse. Reach the eternal Brahman. The second line.
Yanti.
Where? Yanti. Yeah.
So
okay.
the word
okay.
reaching
Yeah.
means
This word,
something is away from you.
away from you.
Why this
Yeah.
translation?
See,
If it recognizes your true nature, it would be easier to understand.
Yes. But these are figurative expressions. This word in Sanskrit means yanti. Yanti means it reaches. But reaches, that's why it is a responsibility of the teacher to explain what it means. Right? Because this is why you need tradition, you need commentaries, because all the time the words cannot be so that you know your true nature, it becomes repetitive, right? So they write, sometimes they say you gain, then you say you reach, but every time the teacher has to do that job that is not actually physically reaching, but knowing the reality. Understanding, exactly. Your understanding reaches that. I mean, it's a figurative expression. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate